Okay, we are back to talk about Silo, Season 2, Episode 10, the finale, titled Into the Fire. This episode written by Arik Avellino and directed by Amber Templemore. Before Juliet and Jimmy can leave Silo 17, he shows her some information about something called the safeguard procedure, which is poison that could be pumped into a silo, kill all of its inhabitants. Jimmy's parents figured out a way to stop it that many years ago, and Juliet must do the same to try to save her people in Silo 18. The new suit that Juliet found, however, is full of holes and unusable. So after Jimmy tests the fire suit they put together, Juliet leaves Jimmy, Rick, Audrey, Benny, Tess, and Hope, not Eater, to go back to her own home silo. In Silo 18, Knox and Shirley are finalizing some plans to attack raiders and blow up the generator, but all that ends up being a diversion as the leadership, including Walker, are putting on sort of a front for Bernard so that he will arrest those in mechanical, bring them all up top, and then send all the raiders down to try to defuse the bomb in the generator. The sheriff deputies release the mechanical prisoners, give them weapons, let them take over the top levels, while Juliet's father, Dr. Nichols, sacrifices himself, setting off a bomb that destroys stairs and lower levels of the silo, trapping all the raiders in the down deep. Lucas returns, tells Bernard that he knows what the safeguard procedure is. Bernard basically then gives up and gives his key and the command of IT to Sims and takes a suit and heads to the top of the silo. Sims then takes his family into the vault, but the AI, the algorithm, only wants his wife Camille to stay. Juliet arrives just as riders are about to go outside, and she tells them by showing them through the window that it is not safe. She runs into Bernard on her way in and tells him that she has a way to deactivate the safeguard procedure. However, the episode ends with a flashback to some kind of tavern in Washington, D.C., where a congressman from Georgia meets with a reporter named Helen, where they discuss a dirty bomb that went off in the U.S. that apparently came from Iran and some potential retaliation. When they part, the congressman gives Helen a duck Pez dispenser that we presume is the same one George gave Juliet in the silo many years in the future. Um, Boy, we go, looks like way back in the past. We also have finally sort of the Juliet returning momentarily to Silo 18. Um, I don't know what's the best place to start. Maybe to go through what we learned in the silos and then see sort of how it might be impacted by what we learn at the end.
Yeah, I mean, so I enjoyed the episode. I want to be clear. At the same time, I'm maybe a little bit disappointed, and
Mhm.
we'll flesh that out as we move forward here. And I just mean I wanted more information. I think I said last week it was like one of the very few times you'd ever hear me say in a TV show, "Go ahead and give me an exposition dump." You know, not Bernard, Lucas is sitting there at the bottom of the silo talking to the algorithm. That's where we left him. And by the time we pick up, he's, going back up, What
I
else
will.
happened
When
down
I
there?
saw that, yeah, when I saw that, my first thought was, oh crap. Like they went through that whole thing and didn't show us anything.
Pretty much, pretty much. Um, but okay. I'm almost tempted to say, maybe we should say what we want to say about the rebellion in Silo 18 first, because I think that there's a whole lot of stuff that happens, but I don't know that it pertains to the big questions so much as everything else, as it were.
Yeah. Especially when, it's hard to say it could have predicted all of this. I don't think that's the point that I'm trying to make, but that we knew that something like this, we even talked about this last week, something like this would happen. There would be some way where they're able to turn the tables on Bernard. They're able to successfully rebel and whatever that looks like that they're trying to do. And then in some capacity, some people are going to try to say, all right, we're free, we're going out. And yes, lo and behold, Juliet shows up just at the right moment to keep them inside. I think that I liked the con they pull on Bernard. I haven't gone back to look and see if all of the conversations between Walker and Knox and Walker and others involved hand signals, but
Yeah.
sure, I'm willing to believe it.
We read that correctly. I was worried for a minute as this episode starts, like, oh no, were we wrong?
Yeah,
About that. But then they finally make it clear with the hand signals and stuff. It's like, okay, cool. Um, Again, I find it really interesting as a viewer, personally at least, the way that I kept feeling not even torn, but the extent to which I was rooting for Bernard, even though in terms of the people involved, I would be, I'd want to be in solidarity with Mechanical and Knox and Shirley and Walker and all of them. But what they're doing is, we know, potentially going to kill everyone in the silo. So it's a weird. I enjoy that. I actually enjoy that dynamic that the show manages to pull off. Like you have that moment where Bernard, and Tim Robbins is just great here.
Hmm.
Um, he's kind of like laughing in Walker's face. He's kind of like spiking the football, like, "Oh, was something supposed to happen? No, nothing happened." It's just like you kind of hate him, but at the same, but yeah, again, in terms of the overall thing, um, you certainly don't want this rebellion to succeed and for them to end up going outside as like Patrick Kennedy wants to do it, right?
Yeah.
Thankfully, Juliet does show up. That we saw that coming, right? Like,
But maybe this one detail passed me by over the past weeks as I've been swimming around in this world, but I, I don't recall when or how sort of this split happened where Knox and Shirley and Billings were firmly on the we need to do this rebellion, but we cannot go outside. I always knew that Patrick and others were interested in going outside, but it seems like, right at the moment where they take charge of things, Knox, Shirley, and Billings are very adamant about we cannot go out there. I
mm,
don't remember the moment that they made that declaration of, we don't want to go outside anymore. We don't want to do that because we know it's not safe.
I think it's more that they were never really interested in going outside.
Hmm.
They just want the truth,
Yeah.
right? Um, in contrast to Patrick Kennedy, who's convinced that it is actually safe outside. I feel like Knox, Shirley, Walker, Billings, they never become convinced that it's safe outside.
Yeah.
Um, it's an open question to them. They would like to know if they're being lied to about that.
Yeah.
Um,
They're more
but
of a
they never
let's
got to the
check
point.
things out group. Whereas
Yeah,
Patrick was convinced because he saw what Juliet saw, which was, her visor showing this green lush. Or we're going. Right. So there's a group that's not yet, and there's a group that's right now. I think that's what we're looking at.
right. And if we think back to what we saw in Silo 17, it seems kind of similar, right? Like what they were trying to do was to get into IT. They were trying to find out answers. They were trying to find the truth, and that failed. And then we're left with just the option of, okay, well, do we go ahead and try to go outside?
Yeah,
Do
that's
we
right.
make, because they were like kind of out of other options. It is interesting thinking about the safeguard and what I still want to call him Solo, but whatever. What he says about it and his parents figuring it out and disabling it in Silo 17. I don't know if that's what our sheriff friend was wondering about, if Russell lied about um, in that dialogue from season one,
Yeah,
episode one.
that's a good question. It was, and maybe one of the minor quibbles I have with this episode or disappointment. It was a very, I guess, convenient thing for Jimmy to run across or to remember, about his parents talking about this and taking care of this problem. Considering that Juliet's going to have to address that exact same thing as she gets back into Silo 18. I mean, I guess that was the whole point of him getting back into the area where he used to live and all of that. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly what the conversation between Russell that we've seen a couple of times what that's referencing, but it certainly could be.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Maybe let's go ahead and move into this question. I feel like maybe I have more of a question than you do. To everyone, Ryan's recap article on this episode is up on tvobsessive.com. I've read it. I would encourage you to read it. And I mean, I guess my question centers on, I mean, to jump to it directly, it
Hmm.
would be what I mentioned before, like what did the algorithm say to Lucas further in the bottom of the silo? Slash, what does Lucas whisper to Bernard? Because like once he does that, the effect on Bernard is immediate, and he's just like, okay, I'm done. Like it reminded me of watching the Radiohead video for Just, I'm talking about
Mm.
the guy that whispers in his ear and they all start lying down
Yep.
on the pavement. um Bernard was just like, all right, out of here. It's over. And okay, so because what we definitely do learn a significant more about in this episode is the safeguard.
Yes.
But is Lucas telling Bernard about the safeguard? That seems to be the inference you were drawing in your article, which I think could be fair.
Yeah.
I don't know if I think that that's right or if or not.
So I think that I think that the safeguard is a component of what Lucas has learned and probably a piece of what he told Bernard. I mean, it doesn't seem like he whispered in his ear for that long, unless he just whispered something like, "Listen, this is helpless. It doesn't matter. You can try to do everything that you possibly can to save this place. It's not in your hands." Would that have been what caused Meadows to leave and caused Meadows to spend 25 years as a drunk? Maybe that there's just absolutely no hope. But I'm with you. I think that that is a part of what has been communicated to Lucas and part of what Lucas has communicated to Bernard. But I think that they did not show us that entire scene between Lucas and the algorithm because there is still more that we
Yeah,
have yet to learn.
I feel like they're still withholding the big thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. One question I had was, well, as the head of IT, would Bernard have already known about the safeguard?
Exactly.
Russell, apparently in Silo 17, knew about the safeguard or found
Hmm.
out about the safeguard. Which one is it? Did he know in his official capacity, or was he on a similar kind of path as Salvador Quinn?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, is this something Salvador Quinn somehow discovered? Part of what's really sticking in here is when we saw Lucas talking to the algorithm said something like, you can't tell anyone what you're about to learn,
Yep.
or it will activate the safeguard. Do you know what the safeguard is? Yes. Lucas
Yep.
already knew what the safeguard was, perhaps from reading Quinn's letter,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so it definitely feels to me like there's something more here,
Yeah.
um, and that they're withholding it pretty intentionally in a way that I almost became very frustrated about.
Yeah,
It's like,
it
let me
may have
whisper something. You
may
can't
have
hear it.
something to do with a couple of questions you referenced here in our notes, and then one question that I referenced in the recap that I wrote, that Bernard has a sense of sort of who's pulling the strings here. He has a sense of
Mhm.
who is responsible for all this or who's in charge of all this, but he doesn't know what exactly it is that, or as you call it, what is the game? If Salvador Quinn's message said the game is rigged, what's the game? And why would they have this in place? Right? There's some assumptions we can probably draw from what we see at the end, very end of this episode. That could be a, fail safe or safeguard protocol for certain things, but Bernard says he doesn't know why, right? If it's as simple as, well, they want to be able to, these people are not safe. They're toxic. They're full of radiation. We need to be able to kill them if they try to escape. Okay. But it seems like that information is still being withheld, not only from Bernard, but maybe Lucas has learned it. Maybe Meadows learned it in the past. George probably learned it in the past as well. I don't think we know all of it yet.
Yeah, here's my theory. Here's my speculative theory, right? That what's being withheld has to do with this idea that the game is rigged, right? It's like, well,
Mhm.
what game? That's from a couple of episodes ago, and we didn't necessarily put a lot of emphasis on it, but the idea that they're in a game, maybe we should
Hmm.
take that more seriously. But the game is rigged means it's a game they can't win.
Hmm.
What are they supposed to be doing in the silo? They're supposed to be perpetuating the human species for a period of time because it's not safe outside, but it's supposed to be at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Plug it out for generations down here in the silo, and your children's 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 children will finally get to
Hmm.
breathe the outside air. And so I think what the algorithm tells Lucas and what Lucas tells Bernard is no, they won't. No
Yeah.
one's ever getting out of here.
Yeah.
If it, um, the algorithm, the safeguard is going to be enacted to kill everyone in here eventually. This story is always going to end that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever triggers it could potentially be triggered now
Yeah.
or in the future. And then that kind of ties into my thought that we're dealing with something more like an experiment,
Hmm.
right? It's not, that's the big lie, right?
Yeah.
And at some point the experiment will end and you will destroy the specimens like you do with, like scientists do with their lab rats.
Yeah. It was interesting to think about what you're saying in that last scene in Silo 18 when I don't think we've seen this before. Maybe we have, and I'm just not recalling it. But when Bernard and Juliet get stuck in sort of the chamber in between the silo and going outside, right? The fire comes in to sort of cleanse that room or get rid of anything that could be toxic. But that's sort of a I don't want to say it's a metaphor, but there's something waiting to cleanse all of this whenever they're ready to do it, right? Or whenever the time is right. Because based on some things we see at the end of the episode, I sort of thought, well, is this sort of there's a group that's recreating society in a way, but it's people that are doing it, they're conditioning people in a certain way, or they're doing it in a certain, positioning people in certain ways to make society or humanity become what they want them to be. But then, yeah, why would why, how is that a losing game? To go back to the vernacular. I'm just not sure yet.
Yeah, that's why I think it has to. I mean, I don't know. I, I like my theory
Yeah.
because if you like, what would make Bernard react in that way?
Hmm.
And I think the idea that, well, this might go on indefinitely long, but there, people in the silo were never going outside.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Yeah. But think about though something that Jimmy says in 17. His parents figured out a way to stop the poison,
that's what he
but
says.
also he says they figured out a way to let people go outside at least for a while.
Yeah.
So that lends more to, we've talked about this theory before as well, is that there are people making this environment this way, actively doing it. It's not just residual effect from whatever we'll talk about at the end, but there are people that are making it this way and they're able to I don't know, cleanse it for a bit and let people go outside. I think that was an interesting line that shouldn't just be thrown away, but we need to think about, oh, there may be a way to, without a suit, get up there and still be healthy.
So here's an idea.
Hmm.
There's the pipe within the silo
Yes.
that can pump poison into the silo, and then there are pipes around the silos that pump poison outside, and that's what kills people,
Yeah.
right? But it does it outside of all 51 of them
Yep.
that are in a similar area. So maybe they disabled the one in silo 17, and then it's like, oh, hey, look, we can go outside. But eventually the poison from the
Yeah.
surrounding silos is going to make it over there
Go over
because
there. Yeah. Go
wind
this way.
exists,
Yeah.
right? I mean, thinking about the comment he made earlier about dust or
Hmm.
whatever, right? It was like poison dust.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I think we're getting there. All right, solved it. Yeah,
We're
podcast
halfway
over.
halfway done with the series. We got a lot of things still to uncover here, but
We
yeah,
don't know who, and we don't really know why,
no, we don't. We don't.
even if
all
everything I was just saying
it's
is right.
all speculation, even with what we learn at the end of this episode. It's all still speculation at this point.
Yeah. Let's run through a couple of things that occur. We should mention. Juliet's father sacrificing himself to blow up the stairs. R.I.P. What was the name of the show? Nichols?
Pete
Pete
Nichols, yeah.
Nichols. R.I.P. Pete.
Ian Glenn, R.I.P. Ian Glenn, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and props to him for his performance in the show because by the time we've gotten to the end of season two, I no longer always think of him as his character from Game of Thrones. He managed to move beyond that, you
Yeah.
know.
Jorah
Uh,
Mormont and Pete Nichols, it'll forever be known, yeah.
so he's done good work. No more Pete Nichols, no more Glenn. Um, we hit on the hand signals and stuff like that. I guess we basically hit on most of this. The fact that then Bernard gives the key to Sims and Camille and their kid go into the vault. What do you think about the fact that the algorithm just wants Camille? Uh,
See, I was going to make you answer that question first.
aha.
I have a lot of rambling thoughts about this. I'm not sure that any of them are coherent, other than going back to something we've discussed before, that Camille always seemed to be right in the middle of things and trying to, in a sense, play both sides often. She often had the right intuition and made the right decisions. Sims, maybe to his detriment, was just more of a follower. I'm going to do what my head of IT says and follow him. Bernard even says you were loyal up until the point that you weren't. So maybe that sort of black and whiteness is not something that the AI appreciates and wants more of the Camille, who can be a chameleon to a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wordplay.
I was very intrigued by that, and it just seemed this probably propels Camille to a much bigger role in season three. It looks like.
Yeah, which I would not have seen coming prior to
Yeah.
season two at all. But I think it works. I think it makes sense. I guess my thought would be, okay, well, Sim says he wants to save the silo. The algorithm says I want that too, right? Um, I don't know, like if what we were talking about before is correct. I don't know for sure, obviously, but we're on a certain kind of precipice.
Hmm.
Maybe it is really close to where the safeguard would be enacted. Um, Whatever. So, but it's not supposed to be over yet, right? Like, so I'm
Yeah.
theorizing that on the outside there is some kind of time frame where the end of this is not ever people coming out of the silo. It's just okay. Well, now we just kill the
Yeah.
test subjects, but it's not really supposed to be yet. They're willing for it to be now. The algorithms doesn't necessarily want it to be now. So what do you need? You need someone new to take charge of the silo. If this algorithm has been like keeping an eye on everything, the
Hmm.
algorithm knows that Robert Sims is not a good um, dear leader,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and that is assessing that Camille will be able to do this job and take Bernard's place and so on. That's my
Yeah.
thought.
I think that's a very fair assessment of this. I often wondered, one of the first things that popped in my mind here was sort of, is this also sort of like the Noah's Ark situation where going to, if we have to, if things have gotten out of hand, whether through rebellion or or other things, we're going to launch the safeguard procedure, and we're going to wipe out everybody except a few, and then we're going to restart things with this and see if we can get it right this time, whatever this is. So I don't know. It would, would a head of IT or the person who is trying to work with the algorithm to quote unquote save the silo be included in the safeguard procedure? We just don't know enough yet to realize that.
I don't think, yes, here's what I'm thinking, right? So you think about what we get from that scene at the very end of the episode, which is actually not a ton, but something about a dirty bomb. They
Mhm.
are testing people as they enter the bar. It did make me wonder if there was any relationship between the syndrome and radiation
Hmm.
poisoning. I don't know.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
it's so funny to bring that up. Billings sort of got over his syndrome, and we haven't heard about it since. So I don't know. I don't know.
right, like they just kind of like left that. And you also had
Yeah.
Meadows saying like, well, maybe it's just because you lived underground. That's not normal, But that thought occurred to me. Regardless, what I'm thinking is okay. The silos perhaps were created not because the world has ended, but as a really dystopian plan in the face of such a possibility, right? Like, would it be possible to put a bunch of people underground in a silo in order to save humanity or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
And we're not gonna try just once. We're gonna try 50 times or 51 for some reason. Um, but then all of those are experiments, you
Yeah.
know. And so each individual one they're willing to call off when it's failed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I've thought about this last scene a lot and thought about the conversations, the little Easter eggs we get, with the magazine with the hazmat suit on it. There's the little things that we see. Obviously, the information that we learn about dirty bombs in Iran and retaliation and what's happened in different places that this congressman has worked. And so it seemed like a very logical step to make that dirty bomb is launched, there's retaliation, things go badly. We have to build silos and put people in them so that they survive, right? That's a logical step to take here. But I think we could probably both agree that that certainly is just not what's happening here. You have to think about the time and logistics it would take to build these things and to plan them and to put everything into place. The world's going to have gone to crap before then. Um, so something else is at play here. It's not just a very simple the United States became toxic, we have to put people underground. Yeah, there's definitely more, but they've hinted at that, and that's not won't be surprising to anybody.
Yeah. I mean, it does make me wonder though, if it's like they put the specific people underground who had been affected by the dirty bomb already,
Mm,
right? Like the people who would not have been let into that bar, they said, oh, well, we're going to put you underground. You're going to
yep,
be like our test subjects for the silo plan or something like
yep,
that. I mean, because I guess we're supposed to read that Pez dispenser is the same Pez dispenser we've already seen, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I did see somebody that like somebody this morning in something I read had tracked down like what cereal or what sort of what I guess group of Pez dispensers that were made in a certain year came together, and were there ever any that looked like it but were not similar, and they were not like that was the only duck Pez dispenser ever made, or so just somebody had already tracked this down and realized that no, that's the only one. So there's not could not have been a different duck Pez dispenser at a different time.
well, but it's not like they only made one copy
Yeah,
of the Pez dispenser, is what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you want to draw the implication that this particular woman,
yeah,
Helen's Pez dispenser, is going to end up in the silo, you know, I am drawing that conclusion, but only because I'm watching a television show. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like any number of Pez dispensers up. Um, we have gotten news today that these actors have been signed on as series regulars moving forward. Do you have their names at ready?
Yeah, yeah. Ashley Zuckerman is plays Daniel, the congressman from Georgia. Jessica Henwick plays Helen, the reporter who meets with Daniel in the bar. And yes, Deadline has reported today that they will be series regulars, which means this is not going to be a every so often they appear, but this could be more like as we split time equally between Silo 17 and 18 this season, we may be splitting time between the past and the present in the next season.
Yeah, which could be very interesting. Hopefully they could pull that off well if we are. It was a little bit jarring watching this scene. I mean, the style's so different. We're all of a sudden outside.
Yeah.
Um, imagine if it had been daytime. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
everything in the show for the most part is so gray. I think about this sometimes when I'm like taking screenshots. I'm like, well, is this a good one? It really looks pretty drab, you know. Um, but yeah, so I guess we do want more of this. Certainly, I want more information. I'm
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really curious to see exactly how they do that and how they pull that off. Um, what else was I going to say? Oh, Bernard.
Hmm.
So Bernard and Juliet, they're talking like kind of in the tunnel, right? Because Juliet's trying to come back and Bernard's trying to go out. And then the door starts to close. So Juliet goes in and kind of drags Bernard in there with her, or however that goes exactly. But then there's the cleansing fire,
Mhm.
right? And that's where we leave them. That's the cliffhanger we leave our story on before we get this
Right,
coda,
right.
basically, right? That's in the past. Um, I'm going to go out on a limb and presume that Juliet survives.
She is in the fire suit after all.
Yeah, yeah, maybe the fact that it's a firefighter suit gives a little bit more plausibility, but come on, there's massive plot armor here, right? This is Rebecca
Yeah,
Ferguson. This is the main character of the story, and
yeah,
so on. But Bernard might die. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah. Maybe the most curious character decision that has to be made for season three. I'm curious if if he has his way, it didn't sound like he hadn't want anything to do with going back in there and trying to save things or trying to, put an end to the safeguard procedure or whatever might be happening. So does that mean it's time for him to die, or does that mean that there's still more that he can do? I mean, I guess we don't know Tim Robbins' structural situation with this show, so it's hard to speculate.
It is one of those things. Like if we see a particular news item about casting, it could
Yeah,
almost be a spoiler, maybe. I have to say, I guess I hope he survives. I think Tim Robbins has been really great in this show. I think
yeah,
Bernard's
yeah,
been a great character, and that dynamic between Bernard and Juliet that we get a little bit of here towards the end of the episode, I quite enjoyed.
yeah, and,
Um,
and missed it this year.
and yeah, but then the idea of them actually trying to work together
Yeah, yeah,
could be really interesting. Um, but we don't know. At the same time, some plausibility to the idea that, oh boy, it sure was lucky that Juliet ended up using a firefighter suit
yeah,
and Bernard is not in a firefighter suit.
right.
Um, you kind of have to guess that if he lives, he would be at least like in bad shape or something. I
Yeah, we
don't
don't
know
we don't know anything about
exactly.
the head of IT suit. It could be some special nothing
Could
can
be.
penetrate thing. We have no idea.
Yeah, but the one in Silo 17 was eaten by moths or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
I think it's just fabric, man. Um, and that whole area seems to be filling up with fire. So,
Yeah,
um, it's a TV show. So if narratively the plan is for Bernard to survive, he'll survive. But I do think that there is a good chance that that character is going to die here, which is a shame.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's terrible here. Bernard is terrible, but
I still want him to
uh,
be around. Yeah,
Tim Robbins was great, and also like I don't know, man, I was really enjoying Despondent Bernard
yeah.
personally.
Just walking around with your shoulders slumped over, Bernard. Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah,
funny.
just Bernard with soul broken, was kind of entertaining. Also, okay, so who else? We don't really know if we're going to see more of the people in Silo 17. Um,
Yeah,
Steve Zahn has been great this season, so I
he
hope that we
has.
see more Jimmy slash Solo. The others, to be honest, I don't care that much.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm not trying to be harsh about it, but I don't really feel like the show invested me in those characters a whole lot.
no.
So if there's a way
I
they
I
tie into the future, fine. But if not, no.
Yeah, I
I'm not
predict
going
we
to miss
do.
them.
I
So
I predict we see them again. That just nothing to base that on. Just that's my prediction. We do see them again.
I would guess because if you think about what we know, um, well, okay, yeah, some of this is speculative still about the safeguard and all of that. But if they really did at least disable the safeguard in Silo 17, right? And everyone's dead except for these people we've met. And the algorithm is disabled, I think, apparently. Right. We have no indications of an active
Right.
algorithm, you know. Um, there's the open possibility that that run down, decrepit silo is sanctuary
Hmm.
for, you know, um,
Those that
there's
can make it.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll have to go back there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go from there, as it were. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Juliet returning to Silo 18, I would presume, has basically quelled the rebellion's attempt to go outside, at least for the moment.
Yeah.
The algorithm's trying to put Camille in charge. I mean, look, as I said, I presume Juliet survives. We don't actually even know if she gets all the way back into the silo. She's not all the way back into the silo at this point. So,
Yeah. She is close, but we will not find that out for I don't know till this time next year, maybe.
yeah, hopefully they pump this one out and we get season three, in short order. Um, and I think they will, unless there's, some specific reason, something that holds them up again
Yeah.
somehow. But okay, anything else you want to hit on here about this episode, this season, this show?
It's no, I was very glad we went back here to this show. I think it gained some speed and some real momentum towards the end. Very much looking forward to season three, even with this new sort of angle that they've introduced to it.
Yeah, I am as well. Not the end of season one probably hooked me more than the end of season two, to be
Yes,
perfectly
yes.
honest. I don't know what's quite going on with these people in this scene. And
Yeah,
why is it why is it weird to refer to it as a date? I don't know why that bothered me. Because it seems like they're meeting up for a date. But then when one of them uses the word date, it's like, well, no one calls it a date anymore. What? We haven't hit that point now, have we? Am I just like woefully out of touch? Are the youth already saying like we don't go on dates?
yeah. And our congressmen just showing up to random blind dates through apps when, maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, but it does seem like okay, they met through an app or whatever, and but obviously they've looked into each other some, so
Yep,
he
yep.
would have to know that she's a reporter, but maybe he's still thinking of it as a romantic encounter potentially. So
Yeah,
once he gets the sense that she's actually just fishing it for information, he leaves. You know, that would
yeah.
make sense, but we're not given a whole lot to invest in with regard to these characters. So it'll be interesting to see what more we get and how that carries forward and how, yeah, I think presumably season three is going to go back and forth between these two timelines.
You don't become a series regular without the plan to spend a lot of time on screen. So unless we're really being thrown for a loop and that these are happening simultaneously, we're going to spend some time in the past and some time in the present.
I would guess. I mean, it's also you're not going to get like the Dollhouse plan. Did you ever watch Dollhouse?
No.
Yeah. I enjoyed Dollhouse. It was canceled, but it was like you have every episode of the season, and then the season finale is like in the future.
Oh
um,
gosh. Okay.
yeah, it was really kind of a risk, and it failed. The show got canceled. But so I like my reference to it here would be you could have like again all the stuff going on in the silo, and then more of this timeline from the past just at the end, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But if
That's
they've
right.
been signed on as series regulars, it's going to be more than just like a coda like this,
Absolutely. Yeah.
presumably. All right, so we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the podcast. Uh, keep with us. Hopefully, you watch Severance. We're going to be continuing to talk about Severance moving forward from here. Again, we already have a podcast out on the season 2 premiere of Severance. Go check that out. We'll be back next Friday with our usual news and notes and a discussion of season 2, episode 2 of Severance. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. Check out tvobsessive.com. You can find articles on Silo there. Ryan's written on every episode of season 2. I wrote on every episode of season 1. You can also find stuff on Severance there and any number of other TV shows. Hopefully, you will check out the site and poke around and enjoy that. You can follow TV Obsessive on social media. Search for TV Obsessive. And we'll be back next week talking about Severance.
All right. Looking forward to it. See you next time.